I remember walking into school every morning feeling like an invisible shadow. No matter how hard I tried to fit in, the whispers followed me like a dark cloud. They called me loser, not just once or twice, but every single day. The hallways echoed with laughter at my expense, and the classrooms felt like arenas where I was always the target. I was shy, awkward, and desperately craving acceptance, but the harder I reached out, the more I felt pushed away. That label stuck. To me, defining my entire world at that age, it wasn't just the name calling. It was the way people ignored me, the exclusion from groups, and the way I was left out of conversations that seemed so effortless for others. Lunch breaks were the worst, sitting alone at a corner table, watching everyone else laugh and share stories as if I were a ghost. The weight of loneliness settled deep in my chest. I wondered if there was something wrong with me, if I was truly that unworthy of friendship. Those moments carved a quiet desperation inside me that I couldn't yet explain. The school environment was ruthless, like a social battlefield where popularity was currency and I had none. Teachers rarely noticed what was happening behind their desks, or if they did, they looked the other way. I became invisible not just to my peers, but to authority figures, which only made the feeling of helplessness worse. The social rules were cruel and clear: fit in or be crushed. And I was sinking fast. Every day felt like surviving a storm without shelter, a constant fight against a tide I didn't understand. At home, I didn't talk about school much. I didn't want my parents to worry, or maybe I just didn't have the words. The silence grew between us because how do you explain the ache of rejection to people who see you as their hopeful child? So I bottled it up, carrying the pain alone. Sometimes I cried quietly in my room, questioning why life had handed me this script where I was destined to be the outsider. But in that loneliness, a tiny ember of resolve started to glow, a promise to myself that I wouldn't stay this way forever. Looking back, I realized that those early years shaped me in ways I couldn't understand then. The constant bullying made me painfully aware of how fragile self-esteem can be, especially when no one is there to hold it up. But it also taught me resilience, the kind that's forged in silence and tears, not applause. Each insult chipped away pieces of my confidence, yet somehow it also built a foundation beneath me, one I would rely on in the years to come. I learned that pain could either break you or make you stronger. Despite it all, I clung to the hope that things could change. I watched from the sidelines as others thrived, and I wished for a chance to prove I was more than the labels pinned on me. The cruel words and cold shoulders didn't define my potential, even if I couldn't see it. Then, I began to dream quietly about a future where I could rewrite the story, where I could stand tall without the weight of those judgments. But the path to that future was unclear and full of doubt. The hardest part wasn't just the bullying. It was the isolation it caused inside my own mind. I started questioning my worth, my voice, and even my dreams. The loneliness wasn't only physical. It was an emotional exile that left me disconnected from myself. In those moments of despair, I promised I'd find a way out, not just for popularity or acceptance, but for peace within. I didn't know how yet, but that determination was the first step toward changing everything. So this is where my story begins, labeled a loser, dismissed and invisible, but quietly determined. The girl who everyone thought would amount to. Nothing was already dreaming of something bigger. It was in that pain and rejection that the seeds of who I would become were planted, even if no one else saw them. What came next would be a journey of struggle, growth, and ultimately triumph, but that first chapter was written in the shadows. I remember the exact moment everything shifted inside me. The moment I made a silent promise that their words wouldn't control my life anymore. It wasn't sudden or dramatic. It was quiet, almost like a spark flickering to life after a long, dark night. I was tired of feeling small, tired of hiding in the shadows while they laughed. Somewhere deep down, I knew I deserved more than the labels they gave me. That day, I looked at myself in the mirror and vowed I'd rewrite my story, no matter how impossible it seemed. But breaking free from that mindset wasn't easy. The doubts inside me were loud, sometimes louder than the bullies' voices. I struggled to find motivation when every step forward felt heavy with uncertainty. Some days, the weight of past humiliation kept me frozen, trapped in fear of failing again. At home, things weren't perfect either. Financial struggles, family, tensions, and the quiet loneliness that followed me everywhere. It felt like the world was stacked against me, and I wondered if I had the strength to keep fighting. Yet, despite the obstacles, something inside me refused to give up. I started setting small goals, things that felt achievable, even on the hardest days. Finishing my homework, applying for a part-time job, or simply getting out of bed with the hope that tomorrow might be better. Slowly, those small wins built a fragile confidence. It was like planting seeds in rocky soil, unsure if they would grow, but determined to try. I began to believe that my future wasn't written yet, that maybe I could be more than just their loser. My dreams started to stretch beyond survival. I imagined a life where I could stand tall, where my voice mattered, and where I wasn't defined by others' cruelty. I pictured myself graduating, working in a career I loved, maybe even starting my own business one day. These ideas felt wild and distant, but for the first time, I dared to hold them close. Dreaming became an act of rebellion, a refusal to accept the fate others had chosen for me. It gave me a purpose, a reason to keep pushing forward. At the same time, I had to fight the voices of doubt from those around me. People who had known me when I was the loser didn't believe I could change. They said I was wasting my time, that I should settle for less. Some friends drifted away because they couldn't understand my new drive. It was lonely at times, feeling like I was on a different path from everyone I once knew. But I learned that growth often means leaving comfort behind, even if it meant walking alone. I found strength in unexpected places. Books became my escape and my teachers, offering wisdom I desperately needed. I started paying attention to stories of people who overcame their struggles, and their journeys inspired me to believe in my own. Sometimes late at night, I would write down my goals and dreams, reminding myself that no matter how dark things seemed, there was a light waiting ahead. Those quiet moments built a foundation of hope I clung to fiercely. The struggle wasn't just external. It was a battle within myself. I had to confront the fears that whispered I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or deserving of success. It took time to replace those lies with truths, that my worth wasn't defined by others' opinions, that my past didn't limit my future. Every day was a choice to believe in myself a little more, even when it felt impossible. That choice became my lifeline and my promise to keep moving forward. Looking back now, I see that turning point as the moment I chose hope over despair, courage over fear. It wasn't a single victory, but a series of small decisions that slowly reshaped who I was. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was starting to live on my own terms. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, that promise to myself became the compass guiding every step I took from that day forward. Starting college was like stepping into a whole new world full of opportunity, but also terrifyingly unfamiliar. I wasn't sure if I belonged there, surrounded by people who seemed so confident and sure of themselves. I worked hard to catch up, studying late into the night, often feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. There were moments when I doubted if I was smart enough or strong enough to make it through. Every failed test or rejected application felt like proof that maybe I was still that loser everyone thought I was. But I kept pushing, clinging to the hope that this was my chance to prove myself. My first jobs weren't glamorous or easy. I worked at small places where I was the youngest, the quietest, and often overlooked. Some days, it felt like no matter how much effort I put in, my work went unnoticed. I faced rude customers, demanding bosses, and long hours that left me drained. Balancing work and school was exhausting, and the weight of responsibilities sometimes crushed my spirit. But each small paycheck and positive comment from a supervisor reminded me that I was capable of more. Those tiny victories fueled my determination to keep moving forward. There were nights I sat alone, poring over textbooks and notes, fighting fatigue and loneliness. The self-doubt crept in like a shadow, whispering that I wasn't good enough. But I would never escape the past. I wrestled with those thoughts daily, sometimes feeling close to giving up. But every time I considered quitting, I thought about the promise I made to myself to rise above it all. That promise became my anchor, pulling me back whenever I felt lost. It wasn't easy and I stumbled often, but I refused to let failure define me. Slowly, I began to notice changes in myself. I learned new skills, developed habits that improved my focus, and found ways to manage stress. I discovered strengths I didn't know I had, like resilience, patience, and problem solving. Some professors recognized my effort and encouraged me, which felt like rare gifts. I started believing that maybe, just maybe, I was capable of building a future I could be proud of. These moments were like the first rays of sunlight after a long storm, fragile but full of promise. Despite progress, the struggle continued. There were setbacks that tested my resolve, missed deadlines, misunderstandings, and moments of isolation. Sometimes I felt invisible again, like my hard work wasn't enough to break through the noise. But I reminded myself that growth isn't linear, it's full of ups and downs. I learned to celebrate small wins and to be kind to myself on tough days. The process of building myself up was slow and painful, but with every challenge, I grew stronger and more confident. I also found support in unexpected places, classmates who became friends, mentors who believed in me, and family members who saw my effort. Their encouragement lifted me during dark times and reminded me that I wasn't alone. Connecting with others helped me heal some of the loneliness that had haunted me for years. I realized that asking for help wasn't a sign of weakness, but a step towards strength. These relationships became an essential part of my journey, giving me hope and a sense of belonging. By the end of this phase, I was no longer the same person who had walked into that school, drowning in shame and doubt. I had built a foundation of skills, confidence, and resilience that would carry me forward. The scars of the past were still there, but they no longer controlled me. I had begun to see myself through a new lens, as someone capable of growth and success, not just a loser from the hallways of my youth. This chapter was a hard-fought victory, one I carried with pride. Looking back, I understand that struggle was necessary. It taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way: patience, perseverance, and the power of self-belief. It wasn't just about surviving college or first jobs. It was about building a new identity. The hope that once seemed so fragile had grown into something real and lasting. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, I felt ready to face it head-on. Armed with everything I had fought to become, I still remember the day I got the call that changed everything. After years of grinding in the background, barely noticed, an opportunity finally landed in my lap. One that could actually prove I was more than the loser label. It wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. I had worked tirelessly, often behind the scenes, building skills no one bothered to see. When that moment came, my heart was pounding with excitement, but also fear. Could I really step into this? Spotlight and show the world what I was made of? The project I was assigned was challenging. A chance to lead a team or launch a product something that required every bit of my focus and skill. I was terrified of failing, knowing that if I stumbled, it wouldn't just be me who suffered, but the hopes I had quietly built over the years. Doubts tried to creep back in, whispering that I wasn't ready, that I would mess it all up. But I pushed those fears aside, reminding myself how far I'd come. This was my moment to break free from the shadows once and for all. Every day was a test of endurance and confidence. I worked long hours, sometimes alone, perfecting every detail and learning to trust my instincts. The pressure was immense, and the weight of expectations felt heavy on my shoulders. Yet, with each small success, a compliment from a colleague, a milestone reached, my confidence grew. I started to believe that I wasn't just lucky, I was capable. For the first time, I felt like I was truly proving my worth, not just to others, but to myself. The excitement was mixed with a strange kind of vulnerability. I was stepping into unfamiliar territory, exposing parts of myself I had hidden for years. It was exhilarating but scary to finally show what I could do when given the chance. The stakes were high, and I knew that this success wasn't just about me. It was about proving to every person who doubted me that their judgment was wrong. The pressure was both a burden and a fuel that pushed me harder than ever before. There were moments when I wanted to give up, when the fear of failure nearly crushed my spirit, but I held on to the promise I made long ago to never let their words define me. I reminded myself that failure wasn't the end, but a step in the journey. I learned to accept imperfections, to ask for help when I needed it, and to celebrate progress, no matter how small. That mindset shift was crucial in turning what felt like a high-stakes gamble into a real chance at success. When the project finally launched, or the opportunity came to fruition, the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. I felt a rush of pride and disbelief, as if all the years of struggle had finally been validated. People who had dismissed me before began to take notice, some with surprise, others with respect. But more than their recognition, I was proud because I had proven something important, that my worth was not tied to their opinions, but to my effort and determination. This breakthrough didn't erase the past, but it transformed how I saw myself. It was a turning point where I stopped chasing approval and started embracing my own potential. I realized that success wasn't about perfection or never failing. It was about showing up, pushing through fear, and daring to believe in myself. That lesson became the foundation for everything that followed, giving me the courage to dream bigger and reach higher. Looking back, I see that first big success as the moment the loser label lost its power over me. It was a victory not just in my career, but in my self-worth. That breakthrough taught me that opportunities come to those who fight for them, and that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight within. From that day forward, I carried the confidence to keep moving forward, knowing that I was capable of more than anyone ever thought possible. After my first big success, I thought the hardest part was behind me. But growing my career was a whole new battle, a constant climb up a ladder that sometimes felt endless and unstable. Each step forward brought new challenges I hadn't expected, more responsibilities, higher stakes, and pressures that tested not only my skills, but my patience and resilience. I quickly realized that success wasn't a destination, but a journey filled with moments of doubt and moments of triumph. Sacrifices became a daily part of my life. Late nights turned into early mornings, weekends disappeared, and social events were missed. Relationships strained because I was often too tired or too focused to be fully present. I had to learn to say no to distractions and prioritize my goals, even when it meant feeling isolated. It was painful to watch others live a life that seemed easier, but I reminded myself that the sacrifices now would pay off later, fueling my determination to keep climbing. Setbacks came when I least expected them: a lost client, a failed project, or harsh criticism from someone I respected. Those moments stung deeply and made me question if I was on the right path. Sometimes I felt the weight of discouragement crushing my spirit, wondering if all the effort was worth it. But every time I stumbled, I chose to see it as a lesson rather than a defeat. I learned to adapt, to bounce back stronger, and to keep my eyes on the bigger picture. Focus became my greatest weapon. I developed routines and habits to maintain my productivity and mental health. Meditation, exercise, and writing in a journal helped me process stress and stay grounded. I surrounded myself with mentors and friends who believed in me and could offer honest advice. Their support was invaluable, reminding me I wasn't alone in this climb. The path was tough, but I grew more confident in my ability to navigate the twists and turns. With each challenge, I discovered new strengths within myself. I became better at managing conflict, making decisions under pressure, and inspiring others to work toward a shared vision. Leadership wasn't just about authority. It was about empathy, communication, and resilience. I was no longer just surviving, I was shaping a future I could be proud of. Those lessons shaped not only my career, but who I was becoming as a person. At times, I faced moments of burnout and self-doubt that threatened to derail me. The pressure to keep performing and proving myself felt overwhelming. I had to remind myself that growth wasn't linear and that rest was part of progress. Taking breaks, setting boundaries, and celebrating small wins kept me balanced. I learned that perseverance doesn't mean pushing endlessly without care. It means caring enough to keep going wisely. Despite the sacrifices and struggles, I kept my eyes on my goals. I remembered why I started this journey: to rise above the past and build a life on my own terms. That vision fueled my resilience during tough times. I understood that every challenge was shaping me for something bigger. The growth wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. I was becoming someone who could handle whatever came next with grace and strength. Looking back, I see this phase as a crucial chapter in my story where ambition met perseverance, and dreams began to turn into reality. The climb wasn't easy, but it was worth every sacrifice and setback. I wasn't just moving up the ladder, I was transforming myself into the leader I always needed. And with that transformation came the confidence to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing I had what it took to succeed. Years had passed since those painful school days, and I never expected to see any of those classmates again. Life had carried me far from that place of loneliness and ridicule. But one afternoon, in a crowded cafe downtown, I spotted someone familiar, a face from my past, someone who had once sneered and dismissed me without a second thought. My heart skipped a beat. I felt a rush of surprise and disbelief, as if time had folded back on itself. The loser label felt heavy again for a moment, but this time I held my head high. Seeing them there, in a different light, stirred a mix of emotions I hadn't anticipated. There was a flicker of anger, memories of the hurtful words, and cold shoulders came rushing back. How had they been so cruel without any second thought? But beneath that anger, I felt something else: pity. I saw the cracks beneath their confident facades, the struggles they were hiding. It was strange to realize that while I had been fighting to build myself up, they were fighting their own battles, ones I never knew about. I wondered how they would react if they recognized me. Would they remember the girl they mocked? Would they be surprised by how much I'd changed, by how far I'd come? The thought made me both nervous and oddly empowered. For years, I had replayed those moments in my mind, but now I had proof that I was no longer that vulnerable girl. The tables had turned in ways I never imagined, and that realization filled me with a quiet satisfaction. At the same time, I struggled. with what I wanted to do next. Should I say hello, pretend I didn't notice, or walk away? The idea of confronting them stirred anxiety, but also a strange curiosity. Part of me wanted to show them who I had become, to challenge the versions of me they thought they knew. Another part wanted to protect myself from any old wounds reopening. It was a confusing tangle of pride, fear, and unresolved emotions. As I watched them from across the room, I realized that we had all grown, but in different directions. Some had achieved success, others looked stuck in places I never expected. It made me reflect on how life doesn't follow a simple script of winners and losers. People's paths twist and turn in unpredictable ways, shaped by choices and circumstances. I felt a deep empathy I hadn't expected, as if we were all just trying to find our way. That unexpected encounter became a mirror reflecting my own growth. I saw how far I'd come, not just professionally, but emotionally. I realized that the labels from my past no longer held power over me. The bitterness I once carried softened into understanding. I didn't owe them anything, not an apology, not a confrontation. I owed myself peace. And in that moment, I chose forgiveness over resentment, strength over pain. Leaving the cafe, I felt a strange sense of closure. The ghosts of my past weren't haunting me anymore. They were simply part of my story. I was no longer defined by their judgments, but by my own choices and resilience. That unexpected crossing of paths wasn't just a coincidence. It was a reminder that I was the author of my life now. The power to shape my future was mine, and no one else's opinion could take that away. Reflecting on that day, I understand how pivotal it was. It marked a turning point where the past met the present, and I chose to move forward with grace. I didn't need to prove anything to them anymore. I had already proven it to myself. The journey from that bullied girl to the woman I am today was my true victory, one no one could ever take away. Deciding to hire some of those old classmates wasn't easy. At first, I wrestled with anger and old wounds that made the idea feel like a form of revenge. But as I thought it through, I realized this wasn't about getting back at anyone. It was about showing real strength, the strength to rise above bitterness and lead with integrity. I wanted to prove that success isn't about holding grudges, but about lifting others up, even those who once doubted you. It was a test of my character and a chance to show what true leadership means. I spent nights debating with myself, questioning if I was making the right choice. Would it be awkward? Could I trust them? What if old tensions resurfaced and disrupted the workplace? Yet, beneath the fears, there was a bigger purpose. I wanted to break the cycle of judgment and exclusion I had endured. Hiring them was a statement. I believed in second chances, and I believe people can change. I was determined to create an environment where past mistakes didn't define future opportunities. Planning this move took careful thought. I reviewed their skills, their current situations, and whether they could truly contribute to the team. It wasn't about pity or charity. It was about building something stronger together. I prepared myself to lead with patience and empathy, knowing it wouldn't be easy. But I was ready to face the challenges because I knew that leadership is tested in moments like these, when you choose growth over resentment and vision over fear. Ultimately, this decision was about reclaiming my own power. I wasn't just hiring employees. I was rewriting the narrative of my past. I wanted to prove that success doesn't mean stepping on others to get ahead. It means lifting them alongside you. This bold move wasn't just about them. It was about who I wanted to be. And as scary as it was, I knew it was the right path for me. A path of courage, forgiveness, and genuine leadership. The first day they showed up at the office, my heart raced in ways I hadn't expected. Seeing them walk through the door, knowing they once mocked and dismissed me, was surreal. The air was thick with tension, mine and theirs. I could feel the weight of unspoken words and old memories hanging between us like a fragile thread. Their eyes flickered with surprise, maybe disbelief. Were they wondering if I'd changed, or if I still carried the scars from our past? I had to remind myself to stay calm and professional, even as emotions surged beneath the surface. As we gathered for the initial meeting, the awkwardness was palpable. The usual small talk felt strained, like everyone was treading carefully around a silent minefield. I caught a few glances that held a mix of curiosity and wariness, and I knew I must have looked equally uncertain. I struggled to balance authority with empathy, showing them respect while asserting my role as their leader. It wasn't about proving who was better anymore. It was about setting a tone of collaboration and mutual growth. But beneath that, I couldn't deny the knot of nerves tightening in my stomach. Some of them tried to act casual, but the old dynamics lingered in subtle ways. A joke here, a hesitant smile there, moments that felt like testing the waters. I saw flashes of guilt in their eyes, maybe regret, or simply discomfort at being on unfamiliar ground. I wondered if they remembered how they treated me back then, and if that weighed on their minds now. I wanted to address the past, but also knew that trust wouldn't be rebuilt overnight. This was the beginning of a new chapter, one written in professionalism rather than pain. Throughout the day, I noticed how they responded to my leadership style, sometimes hesitant, sometimes engaged. It was clear they were trying to find their place in this new dynamic, just as I was trying to lead with patience and fairness. I reminded myself to give them space to prove themselves without holding their past against them. It was a test of my own growth, to lead with an open heart and clear mind, refusing to let old grudges cloud my judgment. This confrontation with the past was not about revenge. It was about moving forward. The tension didn't disappear immediately. There were moments when the silence felt heavy, and I sensed unspoken questions hanging in the air. I could tell they were watching me as much as I was watching them, trying to understand if this new reality was real or just temporary. I focused on being consistent, showing up every day with the same fairness and determination. Slowly, the edges of discomfort began to soften, replaced by a cautious respect that neither of us expected so soon. I won't pretend it was easy. There were days when I questioned if I had made the right decision, but every challenge was a chance to prove to myself that I could rise above the past. I reminded myself that leadership means taking risks, and sometimes that risk is facing your own history head-on. With each interaction, I grew more confident in my ability to lead with strength and compassion. The past was still there, but it no longer controlled the present. By the end of that first week, I felt a shift. The awkwardness was giving way to something new, a tentative connection built on mutual respect and shared goals. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of doubt and tension, but the foundation was being laid. We were no longer the same people from those painful school days. We were colleagues working toward something bigger. And in that realization, I found hope that healing and growth were possible, even when the past felt impossible to overcome. Over time, the walls built by years of hurt and doubt began to crumble between us. What started as awkward, intense interactions slowly transformed into something unexpectedly positive. I saw a genuine effort from some of them to prove they had changed, just as I was striving to lead with patience and openness. It was clear we were all navigating uncharted territory, learning how to respect each other not as former classmates, but as colleagues working towards shared goals. The process wasn't easy, but it was real. Managing people who once doubted me tested my leadership in ways I hadn't anticipated. Old patterns of mistrust sometimes resurfaced, hesitation to take direction, reluctance to fully engage, or moments when past grievances subtly influenced decisions. I had to stay firm yet compassionate, reminding myself that transformation takes time. It was a delicate balance, holding them accountable while giving room for growth. I knew that my role wasn't just about overseeing work, but about fostering an environment where we could all evolve. One of the biggest lessons I learned was humility. I realized that holding on to bitterness would only keep me stuck, and forgiveness was essential not only for their sake, but for my own peace. Letting go of the past allowed me to lead more authentically and connect more deeply. I also saw humility in their willingness to admit mistakes and seek a fresh start. We were all imperfect, all learning. That shared vulnerability became a bridge between us, turning former enemies into teammates. Respect grew gradually but steadily. It wasn't demanded or given lightly. It had to be earned through consistent actions and honest communication. I made a conscious effort to listen to their ideas, encourage their growth, and acknowledge their contributions. In return, I saw a shift in their attitudes, a readiness to follow my lead, not because of hierarchy, but because of trust. It was empowering to watch this transformation unfold, knowing that leadership is less about power and more about building relationships. Challenges didn't disappear, they evolved. Conflicts arose, and difficult conversations were necessary. Sometimes the shadows of our past tested our progress, reminding us of old wounds. But those moments became opportunities to practice patience and empathy, to reinforce that change is a journey, not a destination. We learn to confront issues openly and respectfully, turning potential setbacks into steps forward. It was hard work, but it made our team stronger and more resilient. As we grew together, I noticed a change within myself as well. I became more confident in my ability to lead with both strength and kindness. The experience taught me that true leadership isn't about dominance, but about inspiring and uplifting others, even those who once doubted you. I felt a deep sense of fulfillment watching people grow, knowing I had played a part in helping them reach their potential. That feeling far outweighed any old pain or resentment. This journey also reshaped how I saw success. It wasn't just about personal achievements or climbing the ladder anymore. Success meant creating an environment where people could thrive, change, and find new paths. It was about breaking cycles and redefining what it means to win. The relationships I built during this transformation became some of the most valuable parts of my career and life. They reminded me that change is possible when we choose empathy over judgment. Looking back, I'm proud of how far we came. The transformation wasn't just theirs, it was mine too. We learned that respect, humility, and a willingness to change can heal even the deepest wounds. That lesson stayed with me, shaping the way I lead and live. And though the past still echoes, sometimes it no longer controls me. Instead, it reminds me of the strength we all have to grow beyond what we once believed possible. Looking back on my journey, I realized that the label loser was never about me. It was about the fear and insecurity of those who tried to define me by their narrow view. For years, I let that word shape my identity, clouding my self-worth and limiting my dreams. But the truth I discovered is that no label, no insult, and no moment of pain can truly define who we are. What matters is how we respond, how we rise after falling, and the courage we find to rewrite our own story. Resilience became my greatest teacher. Every setback, every moment of doubt was a chance to prove to myself that I was stronger than my past. I learned that falling doesn't mean failure, it means growth. It means that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you have the power to get back up and keep moving forward. That resilience was born from a quiet, stubborn hope that I would one day be more than what they said I was. And that hope never died. Self-belief was another hard-won lesson. For so long, I looked outside for validation, seeking approval from people who never gave it. But the real breakthrough came when I finally trusted myself. When I stopped waiting for permission to succeed and started believing that I deserved it. That belief wasn't arrogance. It was a quiet, steady confidence rooted in knowing my worth and my potential. It gave me the strength to take risks, to face fear, and to keep chasing my dreams, even when the path was uncertain. Forgiveness played a crucial role in my healing. Forgiving those who hurt me didn't mean forgetting or excusing their behavior. It meant releasing the power they held over me. It freed me from the bitterness that could have trapped me forever. Forgiveness became a gift I gave myself, a way to find peace and move forward without carrying the weight of resentment. It transformed my heart and opened the door to real freedom. I want anyone listening to understand that your past doesn't define your future. The labels others place on you are temporary, but the strength you build within is lasting. You have the power to rise, to heal, and to grow beyond the limits set by fear and judgment. Your story is yours to write, and every day is a chance to turn the page and start a new chapter. Don't let anyone else hold the pen. This journey taught me that success isn't measured by trophies or titles, but by the courage to keep going. When it feels impossible, it's about the small victories, the moments when you choose hope over despair, kindness over bitterness, and growth over stagnation. It's about becoming the person you needed when you were hurting. That transformation is the true win, and it's available to all of us. In the end, what truly defines us isn't what others say, but how we live and love. It's the empathy we show, the challenges we overcome, and the grace with which we handle life's ups and downs. I'm proud of the woman I've become, not because I've erased my past, but because I've embraced it and used it as fuel to build a better future. And that pride is something no one can take away. So if you're listening and feeling stuck or broken, know that you're not alone, and you are not your past. You have everything you need inside you to rewrite your story, to rise stronger, and to create a life filled with meaning and joy. Believe in yourself, forgive when you can, and never stop moving forward. Because your journey is just beginning and the best chapters are still to come.